Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into a world where damp winds press against your skin, where the air carries the sting of salt and smoke, and where the land you stand on feels more like a promise than a possession. You're on a small, battered island in the North Sea, one that barely clings to its shape against waves and raids and the endless churn of history. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you want, share your time and place in the comments. It's always calming to see where and when we all drift off together. Now dim the lights and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake in the sound of dripping water. Your back is pressed against damp straw, and the fibers cling to your tunic. The air smells faintly of smoke, though no fire burns nearby. It is 878, and you are alive in a fragile kingdom called Wessex. Outside, the land shivers under the weight of raids, Viking sails cutting across rivers like knives through cloth. You push yourself up, straw crackling. Your fingertips find the crust of last night's bread, rough and hard, barely enough to chew. Records suggest Alfred, your king, has fled into the swamps, cornered like a fox. He is no figure of marble yet, no legend carved in schoolbooks, only a tired man ducking into reeds, hiding his breath from men who would gladly mount his head on a spear. The damp settles into your bones. You step outside and the mud grips your shoes like a jealous hand. A crow caws overhead, wings black against a washed grey sky. People whisper about surrender, about running, about hiding forever. Yet in your chest there is still the rhythm of a heartbeat that refuses to still. It is not hope exactly, more like stubbornness, the same kind that drives you to scrape lichen from bark just to find something chewable. A neighbor tells you the story of the king and the burned cakes. He hid in a peasant woman's hut, records hint, asked to watch her loaves and let them scorch as his mind wandered to battle. Some say it never happened, a tale spun later to make him human. But tonight the picture comforts you, the thought of a weary king blinking at blackened bread, no wiser or stronger than you, only more stubborn in his refusal to fall. You lift your hood against a drizzle that seeps into everything. Even the sheep huddle together, their wool clumped with moisture. The sound of the marsh at night is strange. Frogs croak from dark pools, reeds hiss when the wind slides through them, and somewhere far off you hear the slap of oars. Every noise is a warning. Every shadow feels like a blade. Sleep comes in scraps. When you drift off, it is shallow, half dreams where you walk along flooded paths and lose your way. You wake with your jaw aching from clenching it shut. The hunger in your belly gnaws more fiercely than any nightmare. And yet, against all odds, you keep moving when the summons comes. Through wet marshes and smoke-laced air, your steps drum into the earth. The men around you are tired, their clothes patched with whatever scraps of cloth they could find. Some wear bits of armor scavenged from dead kin, rusting at the edges. Children too young to fight trail behind, carrying bundles of arrows or skins of water. It is not the march of a mighty army, but the shuffle of survivors. And then a moment you can almost taste the clash at Eddington. Shields press against you, their wood smelling of sap and sweat. Your arms ache under the weight of your spear. Around you shouts crash like thunder. The Vikings had seemed invincible, taller, louder, wearing mail that glitters like water. But on this day you hold your line. The push feels endless, like trying to shove back the sea itself. The press is suffocating. You cannot see faces, only glimpses, a mouth open in a roar, an eye glinting behind a helmet, a hand slick with blood. Your shoulder grinds into the man beside you, and together you lean forward until your muscles scream. Somewhere nearby, a horn blares, low and guttural. For a heartbeat you wonder if it is the sound of your own ribs cracking. When finally the enemy folds, when they retreat into a tangled mess, you hardly notice at first. The silence is more shocking than the din. A bird chirps somewhere. Your body shakes not from wounds but from the sudden absence of noise. The air tastes different, lighter though blood and mud still cling to it. You breathe in, and it feels like the island breathes with you. Later you see prisoners led away. Some are bloodied but alive, bound with ropes that cut into their wrists. Among them is Guthrum, their leader, whose name once carried terror like thunder carries lightning. Now he stares at the ground, lips tight, his future remade by defeat. Word spreads of his surrender, of the strange ritual of baptism where steel-hearted men kneel in water, christened into a faith they once scorned. Not everyone believes it will last. Some whisper they'll come back. That peace is only a pause. Yet for now, you sleep in a hut with the reed mat beneath you, and a stomach filled with more bread than yesterday. Survival itself feels like victory. At night you dream of firelight flickering across wet walls. The flames bend in draughts, shadows stretch and curl like figures retreating into fog. Your body aches in every joint, yet a thread of warmth coils in your chest. It is not triumph, it is something quieter, the knowledge that you are still here. Centuries from now, schoolbooks will speak of Alfred as the Great, but you know him only as the man who refused to vanish. You wonder if greatness is nothing more than that, staying long enough, standing long enough, until history decides your persistence must have meant something more. A child curls beside you, too young to understand the day's weight, breathing softly into the crook of your arm. Their warmth seeps into your skin, their tiny ribs rising and falling like a lullaby. You let your eyes close. Outside, the marsh still stirs with frogs, crows and the restless sigh of reeds, but inside you hear only the hush of sleep. The empire hasn't begun yet, but the breath that fills your chest tonight, sodden, smoky, stubborn, is its first inhale. You wake with the taste of ash on your tongue. The year is 1066, and the island you thought was secured under Alfred's line feels again like tinder waiting for a spark. The harvest is barely gathered when word runs through villages like wildfire. Sails on the horizon, not Viking this time, but something heavier. Norman hulls dark against the channel's glitter. The air smells of iron. Your shield strap digs into your shoulder as you are pulled toward Hastings. The ground shakes with hoofbeats, and dust rises, thick and choking, as cavalry form in lines. You are used to shield walls, to men pressed shoulder to shoulder, earth beneath your boots, but here you face horses that gleam with sweat, riders armored in chains so fine it ripples like water. Some say they pray in Latin words you cannot understand. Others mutter that their crossed banners will be the last thing you ever see. You fight on a hill, Saxon axes swinging, Norman arrows hissing like rain. The sun is hot, unseasonably fierce for October, and sweat blinds your eyes. You hear the sharp whistle of a shaft before you feel the sting, an arrow that skims your cheek, leaving a line of blood. By evening, the ground is carpeted with bodies, and the cry spreads, the king has fallen. Harold struck in the eye, though some later argue whether it was an arrow or a blade. In that single moment, your world tilts. When you stagger home, the air is colder, winter creeps quickly, and with it, a new language thickens in the streets. Norman French rolls off the tongues of soldiers who now command your halls. Records suggest many families clung to their old speech, but over time the sounds mix, bread and pain, ox and beef, two words for the same thing, but divided by who grows it and who eats it. Stone rises where wood once sufficed. Castles gouge the skyline, their walls rough to the touch, their towers like teeth. You walk past one under construction, and the clang of chisels against rock drowns out birdsong. The mason's hands are raw, palms split, mortar stinging their cuts. A boy slips carrying a bucket of lime, and his cry echoes until swallowed by the walls. The castle is not only a fortress, it is a reminder. Each time you lift your eyes, you see who rules you now. It feels like a neighbor, forcing his way in, and sitting on your hearth, taking the seat closest to the fire. You are pressed into service, digging ditches around these keeps. Mud sticks to your calves, the smell of sweat and wet soil rising into your nostrils. At night you sleep in a hut outside the palisade, and when the wind shifts you can hear Norman laughter from within their halls. They feast on roasted meats, while your own supper is broth thin enough to see the bottom of the bowl. Inside the new churches, Latin prayers echo off stone arches. You kneel because everyone kneels, though the words feel foreign in your mouth. Candles smoke, dripping wax on the altar, while monks in black robes chant in slow, heavy tones. Some claim the Normans build these walls for God, but you sense they are also built for you, to hem you in, to remind you of who now decides the rhythm of your days. In Ireland, the story is harsher still. You travel across the sea with an expedition, sails billowing as gulls scream overhead. The coastline appears jagged, green cliffs veined with mist. Here the invasion feels less like conquest and more like theft in broad daylight. The chroniclers write of Henry II's banners unfurling, but to you it feels simpler, a neighbour breaking down the door and making himself at home. Fields are seized, churches claimed, and stone castles root themselves in foreign soil. Not everyone agrees the conquest was complete. Some say the Gaelic lords bent only on parchment, not in spirit, but the scars of those first intrusions remain like welts across the land. You hear stories of marcher lords, half barons, half bandits, who live on the edge of English and Welsh lands, their castles jutting like fists into valleys. Their rule is lawless, shifting, as if the border itself is a living creature, hungry and restless. At night fires burn on both sides, each daring the other to cross. The seasons blur. You find yourself older, trudging beneath Norman towers that now feel permanent. Yet you remember a time when the sky was clear of stone, when the hills rolled uninterrupted. Now the island feels altered, as though someone has pressed their thumb deep into soft clay and left the mark forever. Still, life does not end. You till soil, trade at markets, watch children stumble through French prayers they only half comprehend. The empire to come is still centuries away, but already the island has learned a lesson it will repeat. Survival means bending, absorbing and then reshaping what was once foreign. At night you sit outside your hut, the sky vast and freckled with stars. A cool wind brushes your face, carrying the distant toll of a bell from a stone church newly built. You close your eyes, feeling both the weight of loss and the strange resilience that clings to your bones. History does not pause, it only folds, layer upon layer, like cloth pressed in a chest. And sometimes, in the silence between the tolling of bells, you almost believe the island is whispering back to you. Not in French or Saxon, but in something older still. The murmur of waves, the rustle of reeds, the soft insistence that nothing here ever truly disappears. It only changes shape. You wait to the tang of brine carried inland on a stiff wind. The year is edging toward the end of the 15th century, and the sound of gulls feels sharper, more insistent than it once did. The wars that tore the island apart, York against Lancaster, Red Rose against White, have quieted, and in their silence a different hunger begins to stir. You feel it in the markets, where cloth and tin are weighed and bargained for, where the air smells of wool grease and fish scales. You hear it in the words of neighbours who speak of seas not yet sailed, and of riches that might lie beyond them. Ships are growing larger, their masts taller, sails sewn from thicker canvas that billow like bellies in the wind. You walk along the docks at Bristol, and the boards creak beneath your feet. The harbour water slaps against hulls, and the smell is a mixture of pitch, seaweed and stale ale. You run your hand along the curve of a ship's flank, sticky with tar, and wonder what it would be like to push past the horizon. Rumours say the Portuguese have already rounded Africa, and the Spaniards stumbled upon golden lands far to the west. And here in this damp harbour, men whisper that England should not be left behind. Records suggest that in 1497, John Cabot sails from this very port, hired not by kings with great fanfare but under smaller promises, merchants pooling money, a monarch granting just enough favour to test the waters. You can almost see him, eyes narrowed against the wind, speaking in an Italian accent that rolls differently than the English around him. His ship, the Matthew, is small by continental standards, yet when it vanishes into mist, it carries the weight of a nation's first tentative step into oceans that will one day define it. The voyage is short compared to Columbus's, but the land Cabot sights, rocky Newfoundland, teeming with cod thick enough to slow a boat's passage, feels immense. You imagine the splash of fish breaking the surface, silver backs flashing in sunlight, a bounty so rich it seems endless. He returns with little else, no spices or gold, yet the sea itself feels suddenly generous, as if promising more to come. Not everyone believes the stories. Some say he found only ice and despair. Yet the word spreads, and the horizon begins to feel closer to every man with salt in his veins. You step back into your own life, your hands roughened by rope and salt. You hear dockside voices rise with hope and disbelief in equal measure. A barrel of herring thuds against the pier, splitting its seam, and the smell of brine fills your nose. Children dart between ropes, chasing rats that spill from the cargo. Above it all, seagulls circle, their cries like laughter, sharp and mocking. Years pass, and the Tudor dynasty strengthens. Henry VII, cautious and deliberate, counts coins with a miser's care. His son Henry VIII bursts larger than life. Marriages, palaces, the roar of cannon salutes from ships built not merely for transport but for war. You stand at Woolwich as the Mary Rose is launched, its timbers gleaming, flags snapping in the breeze. The crowd cheers as though witnessing a new age. And when it sails out, heavy with guns, you feel a thrum in your chest like the beat of a drum. Naval might is no longer an afterthought. It is a statement. Wooden walls bristle with iron mouths, each cannon a promise. The smell of gunpowder hangs heavy after a test firing, smoke curling into your nose, gritty on your tongue. Sailors cough, wiping eyes with tar-streaked hands, and laugh as though the acrid cloud is proof of destiny. You watch the king himself stride the deck, broad and red-faced, boasting of England's reach. To you it feels as though the island has turned its gaze outward, restless, impatient for seas yet unclaimed. Still, voyages are perilous. Many who leave never return. Records suggest that some ships vanish into storms, torn apart by winds that howl like beasts. Families wait on the shore for sails that never appear. Mothers clutch rosaries until the beads are slick with sweat, whispering prayers that drift unheard across waves. For every Cabot who finds land, there are nameless sailors who sink into silence. Yet the tales of loss only seem to feed the hunger for more attempts, as if the sea's cruelty makes its riches more alluring. You linger in London's alleys, where talk of exploration mingles with rumours of foreign wealth. Spices from the Levant, cinnamon, pepper, nutmeg, fill the air with warmth, exotic and intoxicating. A single sack of such treasures could equal a farmer's lifetime of work. The streets are muddy, dogs nosing through refuse, yet the scent of cinnamon rising from a merchant's stall hints at another world, distant but real. You breathe it in, eyes closing for a heartbeat, imagining places where warmth is constant, where fruit hangs heavy on trees without need of careful tending. At court, debates simmer. Some insist England is too small, too poor to chase empires. Others say the ocean is the only path forward, that the island's very isolation is a blessing. It forces you to reach outward. Arguments flare, then fade into murmurs as cups of ale are lifted, as feasts continue under tapestries thick with dust. But you, standing unseen by the hearth, feel the tide turning. You remember a time when stone castles were the measure of power, when conquest meant planting towers on neighboring soil. Now you sense that the sea itself is becoming the new fortress, one that stretches beyond sight, its walls invisible, its gates open only to those daring enough to sail through. The docks at Bristol and London buzz with this energy. A boy no older than 12 hauls a coil of rope, heavier than his thin arms can bear. His face is smeared with pitch, his bare feet cracked and blackened, yet his eyes shine when he stares at the masts towering above him. Perhaps he dreams of Cabot, of crossing waters so wide they swallow the horizon. Perhaps he simply dreams of a meal better than the crust he gnaws between loads. Night falls, and you lie on the damp boards of a wharfside shack. The tide slaps against pilings, the rhythm steady, endless. You hear sailors singing low, their voices weaving into the creak of rigging, and the moan of wind through masts. You close your eyes, and for a moment, it feels as if the entire island is rocking gently on the water, drifting into a future none can yet imagine. When morning comes, fog clings to the river. The world feels smaller, quieter, yet in that hush, you sense something immense stirring, as though the island itself has taken a deep breath. Not of survival, as in Alfred's marshes, nor of endurance, as under Norman stone, but of ambition. A hunger not for the field next door, but for horizons thousands of miles away. You pull your cloak tighter, the wool damp with mist, the air tastes of salt and smoke, sharp and bracing. You know storms will come, ships will vanish, men will die unnamed. And yet the tide cannot be stopped. The water laps, the gulls cry, and the sails rise. You wake to the smell of pitch and oranges. The year has moved forward into Elizabeth's reign, and the air around you feels charged like the sky just before a storm. The docks of Plymouth creak under the weight of ships being readied, their hulls swelling with salted meat, barrels of fresh water, and cargo not yet named. Sailors chatter, spitting into the tide, while merchants argue over the price of cloth and tin. Everyone seems to be leaning outward toward horizons that glimmer with both promise and peril. The Queen herself sits in London, her hair aflame, her eyes bright with calculation. She favours men like Drake and Rowley, daring mariners who take the sea not only for trade but for plunder. You taste the sharp tang of citrus on your tongue, precious against scurvy, and watch as crates are loaded with nervous hands. These voyages are not just exploration, they are wagers against the might of Spain, a gamble played with salt, iron, and human will. You find yourself aboard one such ship. The deck smells of tar and wet rope. Your hands blister from hauling sails, the coarse fibres biting into your palms until they bleed. At night, the ocean stretches in every direction, black and infinite, the stars burning cold above you. Some nights the sea is flat, calm as glass. Other nights storms rip across the deck, sails snapping like thunderclaps, men clinging to rigging as waves crash high enough to blot out the moon. On one voyage you reach the edge of the world, or what feels like it. The land that rises before you is wild, thick with trees that rustle like whispers, their trunks straight as spears. This is Roanoke, a colony planted in the soil of a new continent. The air is damp, heavy, with the scent of pine resin and unfamiliar flowers. You build crude shelters, bark and timber stacked hurriedly, while insects bite your skin and the nights echo with strange calls. At first there is hope. Corn grows in rough patches. Fish pulled from the shallows shimmer silver in the sun. Yet hunger creeps quickly. The soil is thinner than expected, rains less generous, the winters harsher than anyone imagined. You scratch your name into a timber beam, more for comfort than record, and wonder if anyone across the sea will ever see it. Letters hint that some colonists vanish into the woods, seeking food or shelter among local peoples. Accounts contradict. Some say they were welcomed, others whisper of slaughter. What is left behind is silence, the kind that swallows every footprint. You return years later with a new ship, your boots sinking into the sand of the same Carolina shore. The air smells of salt and ash, and your chest tightens as you find nothing but empty houses. Roofs collapsed, palisades rotted, the settlement eerily quiet. A single word carved into a post, Coltoan, no bodies, no bones, just absence. You stand in the center of the ruined camp, the wind rattling loose shutters, and feel a chill deeper than the sea itself. The lost colony becomes a ghost in England's story, a whisper that not all dreams are meant to root. But the ocean does not let you mourn long. Rumors swirl that Spain is building an armada, a fleet so vast it will blot out the channel, a punishment for piracy, for rebellion, for daring to touch the riches of the new world. In taverns, men talk in low voices of galleons bristling with cannon, of priests whispering blessings over soldiers eager to crush the heretic queen. You sit at a rough wooden table, tankard warm in your hand, and listen as the fear thickens the air. When the armada comes, it is like a wall of wood and sails stretching across the horizon. You grip the railing of an English ship, smaller, faster, its decks smelling of gunpowder and sweat. The sea heaves under the weight of so many vessels, the air filled with the crack of cannon fire. Smoke burns your throat. Your ears ring with the roar. Fire ships are sent into the night, hulls ablaze, drifting like floating torches into the Spanish line. You watch men leap overboard, their screams swallowed by the sea. Morning breaks, and the once mighty armada scatters. Winds lash them northward. Storms batter their hulks against unforgiving coasts. You taste rain on your lips, cold and sharp, and feel the strange stillness of victory. England, the small island that once trembled under Viking raids, has faced the largest fleet in Europe and watched it crumble into wreckage. Yet even as bells ring in London, even as Elizabeth walks among her troops in shining armour, you know the truth is more complex. The Armada is broken by a mix of courage and chance, by fire and storm alike. Still in the hearts of those who witnessed it, the memory hardens into legend. The sea itself rose to defend the island. You return to shore, your ears still buzzing, your clothes soaked through with salt and smoke. The streets of London erupt in celebration. Ale flows like rivers, the smell of roasting meat fills the air. But beneath the joy lies something quieter, a sense that the world has tilted. If Spain can falter, if England can endure, then perhaps this island is destined for something greater. At night you lie awake, the timbers of your small room creaking in the wind. You trace the scars on your hands, the burn of rope and powder that will never fade. Beyond the walls, the city sleeps, soothed by dreams of empire. You close your eyes and imagine sails rising again, stretching toward distant shores, chasing horizons that never stay still. The taste of oranges lingers on your tongue, sharp and sweet. You let it fade as sleep takes you, carrying you into dreams where ships drift endlessly, their lanterns glowing like stars upon the sea. You wake to heat that clings like a fever. The year is 1607, and the air of Virginia tastes different than home. Salt from the river, tang of brackish marsh, and the endless drone of insects fill your ears as you stagger onto sandy soil. Your boots sink into mud, and reeds whip against your legs. You breathe deep, and it feels heavy, thicker, wetter, almost alive in a way that England's cool air never was. The settlement is barely more than an outline. Wooden stakes hammered into earth, half-built huts leaning crookedly, smoke curling from a single fire that burns damp and reluctant. The men around you argue more than they build. Some wear velvet scraps from old lives in London taverns, lace cuffs now frayed and spotted with mud. Others are labourers, hands cracked, eyes wary, already counting how long their rations will last. The river offers water, but when you drink it your stomach twists with sickness. It smells faintly of rot, tastes of salt and mud, leaving your lips dry instead of quenched. You chew on a scrap of hard biscuit left from the voyage. It is stale, pocked with weevils, the crunch of shell mixed with flour. Hunger creeps fast in this land. Records describe the starving time, the winter when snow-dusted half-finished roofs and bellies swelled with emptiness. Men gnawed on boot leather, boiled weeds until the water turned bitter green. Letters hint at darker acts that human flesh was eaten in secret, neighbours vanishing under the cover of night. Not everyone agreed it happened, but the fear lingers in every creak of the palisade, every glance exchanged across the fire. You wake one morning to silence where voices should be. A body slumps by the gate, eyes hollow, skin stretched thin. You press a hand to your ribs and feel the bones like bars of a cage. Around you the colony thins with each passing day. The sound of axes fades. The once loud arguments fall into muttering, then into nothing at all. Only the wind through the marsh grass remains, whispering like a mocking song. And yet stubbornness keeps you upright. Tobacco becomes your salvation, though at first it seems strange. You watch John Rolfe press the small seeds into soil, his fingers careful, his voice filled with hope. The plants rise, green and sharp-smelling, their leaves sticky with resin that clings to your skin. When dried and smoked, the taste is acrid, but buyers in London find it intoxicating. The colony shifts on its axis. Hunger still haunts, but now the fields promise coin. You kneel in the dirt, hands blackened with soil, and understand that survival here will be written not in bread, but in smoke. The crop demands more hands than you have. Ships arrive with indentured servants, young men who trade years of labor for passage, their faces pale and anxious as they step onto the muddy bank. Later, enslaved Africans are brought against their will, their eyes hollow with fear, their wrists bound. Their presence changes the air, heavy with grief, though the colonists speak only of profit. You hear the sound of hoes striking soil, of coughs rising from throats clogged with dust. The rhythm of the fields becomes the pulse of the colony, each beat measured in sweat and suffering. Conflict shadows every harvest. Local tribes watch from the tree line, their presence felt more than seen. Sometimes they trade, corn for beads, venison for iron tools. Other times arrows whistle from the dark, and the night erupts in screams. Not all records agree who struck first, who betrayed whom, but the blood stains the ground regardless. You stand with musket in trembling hands, the smell of powder burning your nostrils, and wonder if this land will ever accept you. Seasons blur, some winters are merciful, some summers brutal. Fever breaks men in their huts, their bodies shaking until they lie still. Others rise stronger, weathered by hardship, their eyes hard as flint. You plant tobacco, you build walls, you patch roofs with thatch that leaks when storms roll in from the sea. Each year, another ship arrives, its sails bright against the horizon, its passengers wide-eyed with hope and dread. The colony grows not from triumph, but from sheer refusal to vanish. One evening, you walk to the edge of the settlement. The river glimmers under a setting sun, its surface broken by darting fish. Smoke drifts upward from the huts, carrying with it the smell of wood and the faint sweetness of tobacco curing. Behind you, laughter rings out, thin, weary, but laughter nonetheless. Children chase each other between cabins, their bare feet pounding dust. In that moment you realize the colony has survived long enough to root. Not safely, not comfortably, but enough to call itself alive. The land feels less foreign now, though it still holds its secrets. You run your hand across the rough bark of a tree, the sap sticky against your skin. You breathe in the scent of pine needles crushed beneath your boots, sharp and resinous. The air is no longer suffocating, though it is still heavy with promise and threat alike. You wonder if this is what empire feels like at its birth. Not banners and parades, but mud, hunger, smoke, and the quiet decision not to give in. At night you lie under a rough blanket, the sounds of insects thrumming through the walls of your hut. The air is warm, humid, pressing. You close your eyes and think of England, stone streets, cold rain, bread that does not crumble into dust. Yet sleep pulls you into dreams of this new land, of fields stretching outward, of rivers winding into unknown forests. Somewhere in the distance you hear drums, low and steady, a heartbeat beneath the night. You wake with dawn, the fields shimmer with dew, the tobacco leaves heavy with moisture. Your breath forms no mist, the air is already warm. You feel both fear and pride, knotting in your chest. The settlement still stands, the crops still grow, and though hunger has carved you hollow, something in you refuses to break. This is not comfort, it is survival, bitter, stubborn, fragile, but survival all the same. You wake to a heat that feels like it has weight. The sun presses down, and the air around you is thick with the smell of salt sweat and something sweeter, sugarcane, cut and left in bundles across a clearing. The year is the early 1600s, and the Caribbean is no paradise for those who work its soil. Your shirt sticks to your back, soaked through before the day has even begun. Mosquitoes whine around your ears, and your throat burns with thirst. The cane fields stretch outward like a green sea, stalks taller than a man, their leaves sharp enough to cut skin. When you walk between the rows, the air feels stifled, the sound of your steps muffled by the rustle of leaves. Workers bend low with machetes, their arms swinging in steady, punishing rhythm. The scent of fresh-cut cane is cloying, sweet, almost intoxicating, yet it mixes with the copper tang of blood where blades bite flesh as often as stalk. Most of those swinging machetes are enslaved. They have been ripped from African coasts, herded across oceans in ships where the stench of sickness and waste was unbearable. Some never survived the voyage. Their bodies slipped into the waves, claimed by the sea without ceremony. The ones who remain stand beside you now, their wrists scarred, their eyes hollow, their voices rising in songs that mix grief with endurance. You hear the low hum of those songs even when no words are clear, carried on the hot wind like a prayer the overseers cannot silence. You taste dust when you breathe. The soil beneath the cane is dry and stubborn, demanding endless labor. Men and women swing blades from dawn until stars appear, their sweat soaking the earth until it darkens in patches. Overseers ride on horseback, whips coiled in their hands, the leather cracking like thunder whenever the pace slackens. The sound makes your stomach knot. The sugar itself glitters deceptively when refined, pale and crystalline. A luxury in London parlours. You picture it spooned into cups of steaming tea, sprinkled over pastries, the powder dissolving without a thought for the blood behind it. Letters home describe the sweetness, not the sores on hands, not the fevers that strike under the Caribbean sun. Not everyone in England knows or wants to know what makes their confections possible. At night, you sit by a fire near the edge of the fields. The flames dance against faces streaked with sweat and ash. Some workers whisper in tongues you do not understand, words carried from homelands far across the ocean. Others sit in silence, their shoulders bowed, their eyes fixed on nothing. You chew a piece of dry bread, the crust brittle, and listen to the fire crackle. The stars above are sharp, brighter than those at home, but the night air carries no coolness. It presses against you, sticky, relentless. Rebellion simmers in this heat. Stories pass between huts of men who rise against their captors, of plantations set aflame, of owners driven into the sea. Accounts contradict. Some say these uprisings succeed, others that they are crushed in blood before they can spread. But the fear lingers in the overseers' eyes, their hands tightening on whips, their glances quick and restless. You feel it too, the sense that the land itself resists, that beneath the sweetness of sugar lies something bitter, unstoppable. You walk through the boiling houses, where cane juice is reduced in great iron cauldrons. The air is suffocating. Steam rises until your skin feels scalded, and the smell is overpowering. Molasses thick and sticky coating everything it touches. Workers stir the vats with long paddles, their faces slick with sweat, their lungs choked by the haze. The sound is constant, bubbling liquid, the hiss of steam, the clang of iron. You press a hand to your chest, and your heart hammers as though in protest. Yet wealth pours from these cauldrons. Ships depart heavy with sugar, their holds sticky with spilled syrup, rats swarming the barrels. They carry with them not just sweetness but profit enough to transform cities, to gild mansions, to fund wars. Planters boast of their riches in letters home, their ink smudged with sweat, their words full of pride. To you those words feel like ash in the mouth. You have seen the sores on workers' legs, the chains that clink when they move, the graves dug shallow in soil that never cools. Sometimes you slip into a planter's house, the air inside cooler, shaded by shutters. The furniture gleams with polish, silver dishes set neatly on a long table. The floorboards creak underfoot, carrying the faint scent of citrus and candle wax. Hear the laughter of the powerful echoes, glasses raised, voices boasting of yield and price. It feels like a different world, though it sits just beyond the cane fields. You step back outside, and the gulf between sweetness and suffering strikes like a blow. The Caribbean wind shifts, carrying with it the tang of salt from the sea. You follow it down to the shore, where waves lap against sand scattered with shells. The ocean glitters under the moon, beautiful and cruel. You think of the ships that brought so many here against their will, and the ships that now carry sugar back across those same waters. The sea feels complicit, a highway for both profit and pain. Morning returns, and with it the rhythm of machetes in cane. The sound is steady, relentless, a heartbeat of the islands. Your arms ache from the memory of swinging, your skin raw where the leaves cut like knives. Sweat drips into your eyes, blinding you for a moment. You pause, wipe your face, and glimpse the endless green rose stretching toward the horizon. The work never ends. Still, life finds small cracks to root in. Children chase each other between huts, their laughter sudden, defiant. Women hum while weaving baskets, their voices soft but steady. A man carves a figure from wood, the shavings falling like curled petals into the dust. These quiet acts push back against the weight of chains, reminders that humanity endures even in the harshest fields. As evening falls, you sit again by the fire. The flames flicker, sparks rising into the heavy air. You close your eyes, listening to the hum of voices, to the crackle of wood, to the distant sigh of waves. The sweetness of sugar lingers on your tongue, though you have not tasted it. You think of London teacups, of delicate pastries, and the strange truth that such luxuries are born here, in sweat and blood. You lie back, the earth warm beneath you. Stars crowd the sky, sharp and endless. The night wraps around you like a blanket, heavy, suffocating, but familiar. You breathe deep, and the scent of smoke, cane and salt fills your lungs. Sleep comes slowly, restless, but it comes. This is not triumph. It is endurance. And though the empire grows fat on sugar, you know the fields tell a different story, one written in scars, not sweetness. You wake to the smell of spices carried on a breeze. Pepper sharp enough to sting the nose, cinnamon warm and sweet. Cloves so pungent they linger on your tongue even before you taste them. The year is 1612, and you stand at the edge of the port of Surat, the heart of India's western coast. The air feels different here. Dense, perfumed, alive with a chorus of voices and footsteps echoing across stone quays. Ships jostle for space, their hulls painted in bright colours, sails patched with cloth from half the known world. The water itself smells brackish, churned with fish guts and tar, and you catch yourself gagging at the strength of it. You grip the railing of your company ship, its timbers creaking beneath your feet, and stare at the shoreline. Merchants in flowing robes walk beneath awnings striped red and gold, their sandals slapping against the dust. Camels snort as they are loaded with bales of cotton, their bells jangling, their smell musky and sour. The voices around you are a song you cannot yet follow, words curling in syllables that slide too quickly for your ear. Still, you know the language of trade well enough. Gestures, silver coins, the weight of goods. The East India Company is young, barely a dozen years old, but already it has ambition larger than its sails. You feel it in the way the factors, the company's agents, speak with chests puffed out, their English clipped and proud, even when outnumbered 100-1 by local merchants. They carry ledgers bound in leather, quills tucked into their belts, their eyes forever scanning for profit. To them, Surat is not just a port. It is the doorway to riches, cotton, indigo, silk, pepper, sugar. You stand among them, your fingers stained with ink, your shirt damp with sweat, your heart beating faster with every deal struck. The Mughal Empire watches from a distance. Guards in turbans stand at the gates, their spears glinting in the sun, their eyes steady. Records suggest the Emperor Jahangir himself granted this small factory as a gesture, a cautious allowance rather than true welcome. Not everyone agreed. Some nobles protested that foreign merchants were untrustworthy, that their presence carried danger as much as opportunity. But for now, you are allowed to stay. The walls of your factory rise modestly, whitewashed, simple, a shell compared to the grandeur of palaces beyond. Yet you know that within those walls lies a seed, small, fragile, but capable of growing beyond imagination. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of ink and damp parchment. Ledgers cover the table, their pages filled with cramped handwriting, columns of numbers stacked like soldiers. You dip a quill into ink that stains your fingers black, scratching notes of bales weighed, spices exchanged, silver counted. The work feels endless, yet each mark is another step into this land. You hear flies buzz around spilled sugar, smell the must of cotton stored too long in damp air, feel the grit of sand under your boots tracked in from the yard. Beyond the walls, the market hums like a hive. You step into its heat, the press of bodies nearly overwhelming. Colours blaze, dyed cloths in saffron and indigo, baskets overflowing with fruit, mountains of rice piled high. You touch silk that slips like water through your hands, its sheen dazzling in the light. A vendor thrusts a piece of mango toward you, its juice sticky and sweet, dripping down your chin when you bite. Around you, haggling erupts, Shouts, laughter, hands slicing the air, as if words alone were not enough. The smell is dizzying, roasted meat on skewers, sweat on bare backs, spices ground beneath stone wheels. You watch as your fellow factors negotiate, their voices calm, their smiles thin. They speak of silver coins with kings' heads stamped on them, of contracts written on parchment that crinkles under the weight of seals. Yet you see the hesitation in local eyes. They know the company is not just a trader, it is a stranger, a guest who may not always remain polite. Some accounts hint at suspicion already, whispers that Englishmen cheat weights, that they use debt as chains as strong as iron. You feel the unease yourself, though you keep your face still. Nights are restless, the heat lingers even after the sun sets, pressing into your chest, mosquitoes whine in your ears, leaving welts across your arms. You lie under a thin cloth, the sound of drums carrying from distant villages, the smell of smoke drifting through the shutters. Sleep comes in waves, broken by dreams of home, cool rain, dark ale, bread that tastes of earth rather than spice. Yet when you wake, the market is already alive, and the hum of trade pulls you forward once more. The company's ships come and go, their holds swelling with treasure. Indigo dye that stains fingers blue, cotton so fine it slips through grasping hands, pepper measured by the sack, its scent sharp enough to sting. Each voyage back to London feeds the hunger there, a craving that grows with every new cargo. You picture a London merchant spooning pepper onto meat, marveling at its fire, never knowing the sweat it cost to wrestle it from these markets. As weeks turn to months, the factory becomes more than a warehouse, it becomes a foothold. Brick by brick, the walls grow higher, stronger, more permanent. Muskets lean in corners, powder stored in barrels, guards pace at the gate. This is no longer just trade, it is presence. You feel the change in your bones, a shift subtle but irreversible. One evening, you walk to the riverbank. The water glitters in the fading sun, boats drifting lazily, their sails glowing orange in the light. Children splash at the edges, their laughter carrying across the water. You sit on a rock, the stone warm under you, and watch as the sky deepens to purple. For a moment the noise of trade, the weight of ledgers, the heat of ambition fades. All you hear is the river's steady flow, ancient and unbothered by your presence. And yet, as night falls, you know what the company does not say aloud, that this land is not truly yours, that your welcome is conditional, fragile, easily withdrawn. Records suggest tensions already stir, local rulers wary of foreign arrogance, merchants bristling at unfair bargains. Letters home describe triumphs, not arguments, victories, not suspicions. But you live in the gap between words and truth. You lie down under the hum of crickets, the stars sharp above, the air is warm, the ground beneath you solid. You close your eyes, and in the darkness, you feel the weight of possibility, pressing as surely as the heat. This factory, this outpost, feels small, but small things grow, and somewhere deep inside, you know this door you have stepped through will never fully close again. You wake to the sound of bells ringing across damp streets. The year is 1707, and the air in Edinburgh feels sharp, cold enough that your breath smokes as you walk. The city is restless. Crowds gather outside Parliament, voices raised in anger, fists shaking in the chill. You pull your cloak tighter, wool scratchy against your neck, and catch fragments of their shouts, sold out. Betrayed, the Act of Union has been signed, binding Scotland and England into one kingdom. For some, it is opportunity. For others, it is humiliation. You feel both in equal measure, like two tides colliding. In taverns, arguments flare over ale. Some boast that a single parliament will open new markets, new ships, new fortunes. Others curse the gold that bribed Scottish lords into agreement, coins heavy as silence. The smell of spilled beer, damp wood and pipe smoke clings to your clothes as you slip through the door. You sit by the fire, its warmth softening the cold, and listen to men's voices tumble into threats, then laughter, then weary sighs. It feels less like celebration and more like surrender wrapped in promises. You travel south, the road muddy under your boots, horses kicking clods of earth into your face as carriages pass. London greets you with noise, its streets wide with carriages, the smell of coal thick in the air, smoke smudging the sky. Here the union feels different, less grief, more calculation. Merchants grin at the thought of shared credit, wider markets, more hands to crew the fleets. In coffee houses, men cluster around tables littered with pamphlets and ledgers, their fingers stained with ink. The clatter of cups mixes with the scratch of quills, the air alive with speculation. You hold one of those cups, the coffee bitter, strong, almost medicinal. Around you, brokers argue about bonds, about loans raised to fund new wars. The Bank of England hums at the heart of it all, its vaults heavy with silver, its promises written on slips of paper. Credit itself feels like a new weapon, as sharp as any sword, as commanding as any fleet. You press the parchment between your fingers, marveling at how power can be carried not in cannonballs, but in signatures. The War of the Spanish Succession rages abroad, and you sense its pulse even from these quiet rooms. Maps are spread on tables, inked with red lines and tiny ships. Merchants lean close, their voices dropping. Gibraltar, they whisper, taken in 1704. The word tastes of salt and victory. You imagine standing on that rocky outcrop, cliffs steep above the Mediterranean, cannons jutting outward like teeth. The sea there smells different, warm, briny, sharp with kelp. You picture British sailors hauling ropes, their faces sunburned, their laughter brash. Not everyone agreed it was worth the cost, but the gain feels permanent, like a key shoved into a lock that will not turn back. From Gibraltar, ships fan outward, controlling trade routes, watching over the narrow throat of the sea. You sense the pride swelling in London, though beyond the glitter of victory lies the cost. Letters arrive from soldiers describing heat that cracks lips, diseases that rot the gut, comrades buried in shallow graves. The ink blurs with sweat, with grief, but those words seldom make it into speeches. Back in the city, sugar arrives by the barrel, tobacco by the bale, spices by the chest. The docks reek of molasses, sticky underfoot, rats swarming like waves. You walk past cranes, lifting crates high, sailors shouting, gulls screaming overhead. The empire feels tangible here, each scent, each sound another reminder that goods are flowing like lifeblood into the city's veins. You climb the steps of a merchant's townhouse. Inside, the air is warm with coal fires, walls lined with portraits and polished wood. A silver bowl of sugar sits on the table, delicate crystals glinting like jewels. A servant pours tea, its steam curling fragrant into your nose, mingling with the sweet powder. You sip, the bitterness softened by sweetness, and realize this ritual, quiet, domestic, ordinary, rests on fields and chains thousands of miles away. You set down the cup, the porcelain clinking, and wonder if anyone else in the room tastes blood behind the sugar. But London thrives on forgetting. In the theatres, laughter fills the air, musk and powder, mixing with the scent of oranges sold in the pit. Pamphlets mock politicians, ballads celebrate victories, children run through alleys chasing each other's shouts. You stand in the middle of it, a city swollen with wealth and contradiction. Pride hums in your chest, but unease lingers in your gut. At sea, the Royal Navy grows stronger. Shipyards buzz with activity, hammers ringing on iron, saws shrieking through timber. The smell of pitch is everywhere, clinging to your clothes. You run your hand over a cannon's cold barrel, its weight a promise and a threat. The Navy is not just protection, it is reach, the arm stretching outward to hold distant lands. You sense that power, heavy and intoxicating, pressing into the island's very bones. One evening, you walk along the Thames, the river glows with lantern light, ships rocking gently against their moorings. The air smells of fish and smoke, the water dark and sluggish. Across the tide, you see silhouettes of cranes, their arms frozen like giants waiting to move. The city hums behind you, restless even in night. You breathe deep, tasting coal on the wind, and feel the weight of change. The Union has bound kingdoms into one, the Navy has bound seas into maps, and credit has bound merchants into fortune. Yet none of it feels stable, the treaties are fragile, the debts heavy, the seas uncertain. Still you lie down in a narrow bed, the sheets rough, the air faint with smoke. Sleep comes slowly, but when it does, you dream of ships unfurling sails, of coins clinking, of Gibraltar's cliffs rising like a promise against the horizon. You wake with dawn, the bells ringing again. The city stirs, restless, eager, and you know the empire has grown another limb, not finished, not safe, but stronger than the night before. You wake to the beat of drums. The year is the mid-1750s and war spreads like fire on dry grass. The sound is not confined to one shore, not bounded by one battlefield. It echoes across oceans, carried on the roll of cannons and the tramp of boots. The 7 Years' War has begun, and though no one calls it a world war yet, you feel it in your bones. The world itself is shifting underfoot. In Bengal the air is thick with monsoon damp. The ground squelches under your boots, and the smell of rain-soaked earth mixes with gunpowder. You stand at the gates of Calcutta, and the night is oppressive, heavy with tension. Then comes the chaos. The capture of the city, the imprisonment of British men and women in a small cell, their bodies pressed together, heat suffocating, air vanishing. Later accounts call it the Black Hole of Calcutta. Some say over 100 perished in a single night, their gasps lost in the darkness. Others dispute the numbers, claiming the tragedy was exaggerated to justify revenge. But standing here, you can almost feel the walls closing in, the breath stolen from lungs, the silence that follows. Out of that silence rises Robert Clive. You follow him through mud and rain toward Plassey in 1757. The battlefield smells of wet gunpowder, of rice fields trampled into sludge. Your musket is slick in your hands, sweat dripping despite the rain. The Nav's forces outnumber you, banners snapping above endless ranks, but their allies falter. Bribes, promises, secret deals, all stitched into the fabric of war. When cannons roar and lines break, it feels less like victory and more like betrayal turned to advantage. Still, when the smoke clears, Bengal bends beneath the company's flag. You kneel in the muck, exhausted, and realize this is no longer mere trade. It is rule. The weight of that rule grows heavy. In offices in Calcutta, clerks tally taxes with ink-stained fingers. Ledgers smell of mold and candle wax. Their columns neat, their meaning brutal. Silver drains from villages into company coffers, and famine shadows the land. Letters home speak of profit, not hunger, yet you see children's ribs pressing against their skin, their eyes dull. Some historians later argue the company's greed deepened the famines. Others claim drought played the greater role. To you the truth lies in the silence of empty fields, in the dust where crops should be. Across the ocean, another front rages. In Canada the air is cold, your breath frosting as you march. Snow crunches underfoot, the St. Lawrence River frozen in patches. The French hold Quebec, its cliffs rising above the plains. You feel the bite of winter in your bones, the weight of musket and pack digging into your shoulders. Then comes the assault on the Plains of Abraham. In 1759, the ground is rough, the air sharp with powder. You hear the cries of men, the clash of bayonets, the groans of the wounded left on icy soil. General Wolfe falls, struck down even as victory tilts toward Britain. His body stiffens in the cold, and you realize how thin the line between triumph and death truly is. Louisbourg, too, falls, fortress of stone, battered by cannon until its walls crumble. The harbor smells of smoke and brine, wreckage floating on the tide. French ships burn, their masts collapsing into flame. You stand on the shore, boots blackened with soot, and watch as prisoners shuffle past, their faces drawn. The war stretches across continents, West Africa, the Caribbean, even the Philippines. Everywhere the same rhythm, powder, blood, coin. In London the war feels different. Coffee houses brim with maps, men tracing red lines across the world with inky fingers. Merchants grin at the thought of new markets, while widows weep in doorways for sons lost in distant lands. You taste the bitterness of coffee, smell the coal smoke curling above the city, and sense both pride and exhaustion settling over the streets. Pamphlets trumpet victory, yet debts pile high, the weight of war pressing even on the wealthiest. You return to India in your mind, where forts rise sturdier, walls thick with stone, soldiers drill in the heat, their uniforms clinging with sweat. Sepoys Indian soldiers stand in lines, muskets glinting, their expressions unreadable, some are loyal, some restless. You hear murmurs of discontent, small now but growing. You wonder if empire can ever rest easy when it leans so heavily on the shoulders of those it rules. The war grinds on. In the Caribbean, sugar islands blaze under the sun, fields trampled by armies. You smell burnt cane, smoke drifting thick as fog. Ships clash offshore, their cannon fire echoing like thunder. Some victories taste sweet, Grenada, Guadeloupe, while others are bitter with loss. Each island is both jewel and wound, its soil rich, its people enslaved, its value measured in crystals of sugar that dissolve silently in English tea. When the Treaty of Paris is signed in 1763, the war's roar fades into uneasy quiet. France surrenders Canada, cedes lands in India, hands over islands in the Caribbean. Britain stands at its height, the empire swollen, oceans seemingly under its command. Yet as you walk the muddy streets of a frontier settlement, musket slung over your shoulder, you hear whispers. Native leaders speak of betrayal, of promises broken. Pontiac's rebellion flares, arrows and muskets shattering the illusion of peace. The empire may have grown, but it is restless, uneasy, fragile beneath the surface. You sit one evening on a hill overlooking the St. Lawrence, the river dark under the fading sun. The air is cool, the grass damp beneath your palms. You close your eyes, and the sounds of war echo still, the crack of muskets, the thunder of cannon, the cries of men. Yet beyond them you hear something else, the whisper of water, steady, endless, older than any empire. It reminds you that even victories fade, that the land remembers more than the conquerors admit. The 7 Years' War has left Britain mighty, its flag planted on continents, its navy ruling seas. Yet as you lie back under the stars, your body weary, you sense the cost, the weight of debts, the anger of colonies, the hunger of villages. Victory feels immense, but also unfinished, as though the empire has taken a deep breath it cannot yet release. You pull your cloak tighter against the chill. The war is over, but the world has changed, and in that change you feel the stirrings of storms yet to come. You wake to the smell of tar and salt along a bustling colonial wharf. The year is 1765 and the air in Boston feels charged, sharp as a drawn blade. Merchants shout from the docks hoisting crates of molasses and timber, while children chase each other between barrels. Yet beneath the ordinary bustle lies a crackle of unrest. You sense it in the way voices lower when British officials pass, in the tight grip of men's fists on walking sticks, in the pamphlets pressed secretly into hands. The Stamp Act has arrived. Paper, contracts, licenses, even newspapers cannot move without the King's stamped seal. You hold one in your hands, the wax still smelling faintly of smoke, and feel the weight of it heavier than its size suggests. The ink smears on your fingers, the price gouging deeper than the words. Around you, men curse softly. Some argue it is only fair, empire is costly, war is not free. Others mutter that distant kings have no right to reach into pockets across an ocean. The debate feels less like argument, and more like kindling catching spark. In taverns the air is thick with pipe smoke, the tables sticky with spilled ale. You lean close, ears straining as men whisper about resistance. Names of groups slip through the murk, the Sons of Liberty, angry voices planning protests that might turn into riots. The firelight flickers across faces tight with determination. Someone slams a fist against the table, the tankards rattling, and a low growl of agreement rises from the room. You sip ale gone sour, and realize the colony's heart is hardening. You walk home along cobbled streets, the smell of horse dung and wood smoke sharp in the cold air. Posters have been nailed to walls overnight, their words defiant, their edges flapping in the wind. Children tug at their mothers' skirts, pointing at the crude drawings of tax collectors with nooses around their necks. The world feels restless, as though every street corner hums with tension. The unrest does not stay hidden. In March 1770, you stand in the cold night air, snow crunching under your boots, breath fogging before you. A crowd presses forward, jeering, throwing snowballs packed with stones. Redcoats stand with muskets at the ready, their faces pale in the lantern light. The crack of a shot splits the night, then another, then chaos. Screams pierce the air, bodies fall into the snow, red seeping across white. Later they will call it the Boston Massacre. Some accounts insist the soldiers panicked, others that they fired on command. In the moment, all you know is the sting of powder smoke in your nose, and the heavy silence after the screams fade. You crouch beside a body in the snow, its warmth already fleeing. Around you, the crowd disperses into alleys, voices angry and grieving. The smell of blood clings to your gloves. You wipe them on your coat, but the stain remains. Years roll on, and the tea act follows. In December 1773, you find yourself disguised in feathers and paint, standing in the chill night air, as crates are heaved from ships into Boston Harbor. The wood splinters under axes, tea leaves spilling into the water, dark clouds spreading across the tide. The smell of tannin rises, sharp and bitter, filling your nose. You hear the splash of crates hitting water, the hiss as tea soaks and sinks. Some laugh, some chant, some stand in silence as though realizing this act cannot be undone. The harbor itself seems to bristle, the water turned into protest. Across the colonies, the mood hardens. Farmers shoulder muskets, blacksmiths forge bayonets, preachers thunder from pulpits about liberty. You march along dirt roads lined with stone walls, the fields bare after harvest, the air cold with winter. Men gather in militias, their boots scuffing, their breath visible. Some wear uniforms, others ragged coats, but all carry the same fire in their eyes. You feel it burn in your chest too, a mix of fear, pride and inevitability. The revolution unfolds in bursts. Lexington, Concord, the crack of muskets across fields, the smell of smoke rising from farmhouses. You reload your musket with trembling hands, powder spilling on your fingers. The roar of cannon shakes the ground, and smoke rolls thick, acrid, choking. Neighbors fight neighbors, families divide. Some remain loyal to the crown, their loyalty branded as betrayal by those who cry for independence. Letters hint at bitterness, deeper than battle, that brothers turn against brothers, that homes splinter long before nations do. You watch loyalists flee. Ships crowd the docks, their decks piled with trunks, children clinging to mothers' skirts. The smell of salt and tar fills the air as sails rise, carrying families toward colder shores. Nova Scotia, Quebec, the Caribbean. Some leave willingly, others with tears streaming down their faces, eyes fixed on the land they may never see again. The wharf groans under the weight of bodies, of grief, of endings disguised as departures. In London, the news trickles back across the sea. Coffee houses murmur with outrage and disbelief. Pamphlets mock rebels, speeches call for discipline, yet letters from soldiers tell a harsher truth. Frozen nights in camp, hunger gnawing bellies, disease thinning ranks. You taste the bitterness of defeat in the air, though victory is still claimed in print. Pride bruises, debts grow, and the empire feels its first great fracture. By 1783, peace is signed. The colonies are lost, a new nation born. You stand on a shore, the waves cold against your boots, and stare at the horizon. Across it lies a land no longer yours. The wind bites your face, carrying the scent of brine, of endings of something unknown. Behind you Britain remains strong, its navy intact, its colonies elsewhere still vast, but you feel the wound nonetheless. At night, you lie awake, the room cold, the fire burned low. The revolution echoes in your mind, the crack of muskets, the splash of tea, the whisper of departure. You pull your blanket tighter, the wool scratchy, the weight oddly comforting. Outside, the world is quiet. Inside, you know the empire has changed. Not ended, not broken, but changed. And in that change, something restless stirs. You wake to the creak of ceiling fans turning slowly in heavy air. The year is the 1780s, and you are in Calcutta, the beating heart of company rule. The city smells of river mud and smoke, of curry leaves crushed in hot oil, of ink drying on endless ledgers. Outside your window, the Hooghly River glitters beneath the morning sun, its surface busy with boats, fishermen in canoes, barges piled high with jute, sleek company vessels painted white. From the docks, the calls of workers rise in Bengali and English alike, voices weaving into the hum of a city that feels both ancient and strangely new. You walk through the company's offices, the air cool from thick walls, candles guttering in the corners. Clerks bend over desks, quills scratching across parchment. The smell of ink and mildew hangs heavy, punctuated by the snap of wax seals. Each ledger records taxes collected from villages far beyond the city, numbers stacked in neat columns. To your eyes they are only ink, but you know they represent something harsher. Fields emptied, bellies hollowed, lives reduced to sums. Villagers arrive at the gates, their saris faded, their feet cracked. They carry baskets of rice as payment, though often not enough to satisfy demands. You see the hunger in their faces, children clinging weakly to mothers' skirts. Records suggest the famines that strike Bengal in these decades kill millions. The countryside stripped bare by drought and ruthless collection. Some accounts insist the company's policies made it worse, that warehouses held grain while villagers starved. Others argue the skies failed, that nature, not man, bore the blame. Yet when you walk beyond Calcutta's streets, you see fields empty, huts abandoned, and the silence of villages speaks louder than any debate. Still, the empire advances. Forts rise across the land, stone and brick hauled by sweating workers, muskets glinting atop ramparts. You travel to Madras, the air there filled with salt and spice. The sea crashes against the shore, gulls wheeling overhead. Within the walls, sepoys drill in neat lines, their uniforms stiff in the heat. The crack of muskets echoes, smoke drifting into the sky. Officers shout in English, their words translated into orders in Tamil and Hindi. The rhythm of marching boots on packed earth feels steady, but beneath it you sense unease. Conflict simmers. In the south, Mysore resists. You march under a sky bruised with monsoon clouds, your boots sucking at mud. The air is alive with the croak of frogs, the buzz of insects, the smell of wet earth. Then the roar of cannon splits the air. At Seringapatam, Tipu Sultan's forces clash with the company's. Rockets streak across the sky, hissing, sparking, exploding in bursts of fire that shower the battlefield. You raise your musket, hands trembling, the powder damp in the rain. Smoke blinds you, screams pierce the night. When dawn comes, the field is littered with bodies, their blood mixing with mud, the air rank with iron. The wars are long, brutal. Some nights you share stale bread and weak tea with comrades, your stomach knotted with fear. Other nights you hear rumors whispered around the fire, that allies switch sides, that company promises shift with coin. Letters home boast of victories, of wealth pouring in, but in the flicker of the campfire, you see only exhaustion in every man's face. Further inland, the Maratha Confederacy resists. You ride through dry scrubland, dust rising in choking clouds. The sun beats mercilessly, your lips cracked, your throat raw. Cavalry charges sweep across the plain, hooves drumming like thunder. Muskets flash, sabers gleam, the air full of shouting. Not everyone agrees on who wins each battle. Records contradict, accounts blur, but the war drags on. Villages burned, fields trampled, families displaced. You watch smoke rise on the horizon, smell grain burning, hear the distant wails of the dispossessed. Back in Calcutta, the company grows richer. Merchants count coins, governors dine in grand halls, lit with chandeliers, the tables groan with roasted meats. Silver dishes piled with sweets imported from Europe. Wine flows, laughter echoes, the scent of perfumes and spices mingling. You stand at the edge, a servant's tray in your hands, and watch the excess with a hollow chest. Beyond the walls, famine lingers, sepoys drill, wars simmer. Inside, glasses clink, and empire congratulates itself. You slip outside into the night. The air is cooler, touched with the river's damp. Fireflies blink in the dark, their glow soft against the trees. You walk to the water's edge, the mud cool beneath your feet, and stare at the reflection of lanterns bobbing on the tide. For a moment the noise of the city fades. You hear only the lapping of water, the croak of frogs, the distant call of a night bird. And yet even in that calm, the weight of empire presses. You know the company's grip grows tighter, its reach spreading from coast to inland. The forts, the ledgers, the taxes, the wars, all threads in a net that pulls tighter with each passing year. You feel caught within it, unable to move, yet unable to look away. You return to your quarters, the room hot and still. Mosquitoes whine, their bites leaving your skin raw. You lie on a thin mat, sweat trickling down your back. Sleep comes slowly, tangled with dreams of smoke, of rockets streaking across black skies, of empty fields and hollow eyes. When dawn comes, the city stirs again. Bells ring from temples, calls to prayer rise from mosques. The river glitters in the light. The company's flags flutter above forts. The ledgers fill with new numbers. The drills resume. You step into the day, your body weary, your spirit heavier. This is not conquest as you once imagined it. Swift, decisive, glorious. It is slower, harsher, drawn out in hunger, and ink in the steady tightening of control. The empire grows, but it grows on ground watered with suffering. And as you breathe in the heavy air, you wonder how long such a foundation can hold. You wake to the hiss of steam and the clang of iron. The year is the late 1700s sliding into the early 1800s, and Britain's air is thick with coal smoke. In London, chimneys belch black clouds that smear the sky, while in the dockyards, engines groan with a sound unlike wind or muscle, a new rhythm, metallic, relentless. You stand on the quayside at Deptford and watch as smoke billows from a newly built steamboat, its paddles turning the river into froth. The air smells of soot, hot oil, and damp rope. For the first time, you sense the empire has found a power not even the tides can resist. The Industrial Revolution seeps into every corner of life. In the streets, factories hum night and day, their windows glowing orange in the dark. You pass workers spilling out at dawn, their faces smudged with ash, their lungs hacking with coal dust. Children with bare feet stumble from looms, their fingers raw from thread. Cotton from India and the American South feeds these machines, the bales stacked high, their fibers coating the air like snow. You rub your sleeve across your mouth and taste the dryness, the strange sweetness of dust woven into breath. This new power fuels more than factories, it fuels empire. Ships are built larger, faster, bristling with cannon. The navy, already vast, becomes unstoppable, its sails now joined by iron and steam. You feel it in the sea itself. The ocean's no longer a barrier, but a highway under British command. The Pax Britannica is beginning, a peace enforced not by kindness but by overwhelming strength. You board a transport bound for the other side of the world. The air in the hold is sour with sweat and sickness. Bodies packed tight, prisoners, their ankles chained, mutter in the darkness. Some weep, others stare blankly at the planks. You smell piss and salt, hear the groan of timbers as the ship lurches into the swell. The voyage lasts months. Rats scurry along beams, biting into sacks of flour. Bread goes mouldy, water sours in barrels. Fevers strike, some never rise again. Their bodies are slid into the sea, swallowed without ceremony. When at last land appears, it is harsh and unfamiliar. Eucalyptus trees scent the air, sharp and medicinal. Strange birds call from the branches, their cries harsh, echoing across empty beaches. You set foot on Botany Bay, the sand hot beneath your soles, the sky vast and blinding. Around you convicts stumble ashore, their chains clanking, their faces pale from months without sun. Some kneel to kiss the earth, others curse under their breath. This is Australia, though to you it feels more like exile than colony. You work the land with spade and axe, the soil stubborn, roots tangling beneath the surface. The sun beats mercilessly, your skin blistering, your throat cracked with thirst. The nights bring little relief. Insects buzz, the darkness thick. Aboriginal people watch from a distance, their faces unreadable. Some approach, offering fish, their movements graceful, precise. Others keep away, their silence heavier than words. Records disagree. Some say the first encounters were cautious, even friendly. Others recall violence, mistrust, blood spilled in the sand. You feel the uncertainty with every step, the sense of living in a land that resists being taken. Back at sea, the Navy carries its reach even further. You sail on a frigate patrolling the Atlantic, the air crisp with salt spray, the deck slick with brine. The mission is different now, not conquest, but patrol. Britain has outlawed the slave trade in 1807, and the Navy becomes the enforcer. You hear the cry from the lookout, a sail on the horizon. The chase begins, canvas straining, the wind sharp in your ears, cannons boom, the smell of powder stings your nose. When the slaver is boarded, the hold is revealed, hundreds packed tight, the air foul, the cries of the living mingled with the silence of the dead. You help lift them out, their bodies frail, their eyes hollow. Some stumble on deck, blinking in sunlight, their skin cracked with sores. Others collapse, unable to stand. You pour water into their mouths, but it spills down their chins. The stench of death clings to your clothes long after. The records show thousands were freed by these patrols, yet you know the trade never ended entirely. That profit was too strong a chain to break at once. Still, you feel the tension in your chest ease slightly when the freed ship turns towards safety, sails catching the wind. In ports across Africa, you step ashore to the smell of palm oil, of roasted fish, of wood smoke curling above huts. Markets bustle, drums beat in the distance, yet forts line the coast, cannons staring seaward, reminders that empire here is both commerce and control. Some locals trade eagerly, others bristle, their eyes hard. Letters home speak of opportunity, but your memory holds both the warmth of a shared meal and the flash of a drawn blade. Years pass, and the empire's grip spreads further. Steamships cut travel time in half. Telegraph wires hum with messages sent across oceans in the span of minutes, words sparking like lightning between continents. You watch as cables are laid along seabeds, the great coils of wire unspooled into dark depths. The world feels smaller, tethered together by threads of copper. You touch one of the cables before it slides into the sea, the cold metal rough beneath your fingers, and wonder if the earth itself is being stitched into empire. At home, London grows louder, dirtier, brighter. Gas lamps flicker along streets, their glass fogged with soot. Carriages clatter, newspapers shout headlines, factories roar, yet in drawing rooms, the empire is discussed with calm pride. Globes stand in corners, their surfaces marked with red patches spreading wider each year. Tea is poured, sugar dissolves, and no one mentions the fields or chains that lie behind the sweetness. You sip from a porcelain cup, the taste sharp and comforting, and feel both pride and unease settle in your chest. One night, you walk along the Thames, the water glistens with reflected lanterns, steamships sliding past, their engines thudding steadily. The air smells of coal smoke and river mud, sharp and familiar. You close your eyes and hear the hum of industry, the hiss of steam, the whisper of waves. The empire feels unstoppable, yet you sense the fragility beneath it. So much built on labor, on suffering, on fragile threads stretched taut across the globe. You return home, body weary, lungs filled with the grit of coal and salt. You lie in a narrow bed, sheets rough, the air warm from the fire. Sleep comes slowly, your mind flickering with images, convicts stumbling onto Australian sand, freed men gasping in sunlight, steamships cutting across oceans like iron sharks. You breathe deep, the scent of smoke and tea lingering. This is empire now, powered by steam, measured in cables and charts, enforced by patrols, stretched across seas like never before. It feels immense, unshakable, yet as your eyes close, you wonder what it costs to hold the world in your hands, and whether even steam can carry such weight forever. You wake to the smell of tea steeping in porcelain cups. The year is the 1830s, and London's drawing rooms are filled with steam rising from kettles, the delicate clink of china, and the murmur of voices savouring the Empire's newest ritual. The air is fragrant, strong Assam floral Darjeeling, green leaves brought overland from China, sugar dissolves with a soft hiss, the crystals melting into amber liquid. You sip, and the bitterness softens, replaced by comfort. Yet beneath this comfort lies a hunger that twists continents. In warehouses along the docks, crates pile high, stamped with Chinese characters. The scent of dried tea leaves is sharp, grassy, almost smoky. Men with ledger books pace the aisles, calculating profit. Each cup poured in London requires silver to leave in return, draining Britain's coffers. The balance feels unsustainable. Whispers circle in taverns and counting houses. What if another commodity could be traded instead? One that would flow into China as tea flows out. The answer is opium. You find yourself in Bengal again, the fields thick with poppies, their flowers sway in the breeze, delicate petals of white and pink hiding the sap that oozes from scored pods. The smell is faintly sweet, almost pleasant, but your hands are sticky as you scrape the resin into jars. Workers bend in endless rows, their bodies thin, their eyes dulled by repetition. The harvest is steady, relentless, its purpose clear. From Calcutta, the opium travels downriver, the air thick with humidity, mosquitoes whining in your ears, chests are packed tight into the holds of ships, the wood smelling of tar and resin. The voyage is long, across the Indian Ocean past Singapore into the South China Sea. The sailors cough in the damp air, the decks slick with spray. You taste salt on your lips and the faint acrid scent of the cargo below. In Canton trade is confined. The foreign factories stand clustered by the river, their walls whitewashed, their flags fluttering, British, Dutch, American. The city beyond is closed to you, its gates guarded. Chinese merchants, the Kokong, hold the keys to commerce, their robes rustling as they move through markets heavy with incense and spices. You bow, bargain, smile, but the air is tense. Tea flows out, silver drains and opium creeps in, hidden at first, then swelling like a flood. You walk the narrow alleys of Canton by lantern light. The air is heavy with smoke from pipes. Opium dens crowded with men reclining on mats, their eyes half shut, the sweet sick smell of the drug clinging to your clothes. Some lie motionless, lips parted, smoke drifting from between their teeth. Others murmur softly, lost in dreams. Outside, the streets are quiet, the silence uneasy. You feel the contradiction press in, profit swelling in company coffers, yet despair spreading through these rooms. Not everyone agrees on the morality. In London, debates rage. Pamphlets accuse merchants of poisoning a nation, while others insist it is only trade. That demand creates supply. Letters from missionaries warn of souls lost, of bodies wasting. Yet in Parliament, voices argue louder for revenue, for balance, for empire's survival. You sit in a gallery, the air stale with sweat and candle smoke, and listen as men shout across the chamber. Words like necessity and duty ring out, but to your ears they sound like excuses. In 1839, the debate ends in gunfire. You stand on the deck of a British frigate off the coast of China, the air sharp with salt and smoke. The Qing official Lin Zexu has ordered opium destroyed, chests split and poured into the sea. In retaliation, cannon roar, the sky fills with smoke, the water churns with splintered wood, junks burn, their sails collapsing into flame. The smell of powder, tar and burning resin fills your lungs until you cough. The first opium war has begun. You march through coastal towns, the streets narrow, the air thick with incense and fear. Civilians peer from shuttered windows, their eyes wary. Gunboats patrol the rivers, their decks bristling with cannon. British troops drill in heat that makes uniforms stifling, sweat-soaking collars. The war feels lopsided, modern ships against wooden hulls, rifled muskets against matchlocks. Each skirmish leaves bodies on the ground, blood dark against cobblestones, the metallic tang of it carried on the breeze. In 1842, the Treaty of Nanking is signed. You hold the parchment, its surface stiff, the ink bold, terms are harsh, Hong Kong ceded, ports opened, tariffs fixed. You travel to the island itself, and it feels raw, rocky, a cluster of fishing villages clinging to steep slopes. The air smells of seaweed and drying nets. Yet already surveyors pace the hills, planning streets, docks, warehouses. The harbour gleams deep and sheltered, perfect for fleets. You stand on the shore, gulls wheeling overhead, and sense how this outpost will grow into something larger than its jagged hills suggest. Trade surges. Tea pours out in endless chests, porcelain stacked carefully, silk folded smooth. In return, opium continues to flow, despite treaties, despite shame. You walk the markets again, and the smell of the drug still lingers, sweet and rotten at once. Missionaries despair, officials protest, but the profit is too strong. You feel the weight of it pressing against your chest, like a sickness that spreads quietly but surely. Back in London, tea culture blooms, parlours hum with conversation, steam fogging the windows. Women in lace gloves lift delicate cups, their laughter mingling with the clink of spoons. Men in top hats read newspapers, scented faintly with tobacco smoke and spilled sugar. No one speaks of opium, of war, of suffering. They sip, they smile, they carry on. You sit among them, cup in hand, the taste pleasant, the warmth steady. Yet you cannot shake the memory of smoke-filled dens, of bodies wasting, of cannons thundering across Chinese waters. At night you walk by the Thames. Fog curls along the water, the lamps glowing dim. Ships crowd the river, their hulls heavy with goods, their ropes creaking in the current. You breathe in coal smoke, river mud, salt. The empire feels vast, unstoppable, yet in the silence, you hear echoes, cries in Canton's alleys, the hiss of opium pipes, the crack of guns. You wrap your coat tighter, and wonder how much sweetness one nation can consume before the bitterness rises to choke it. You wake to the rattle of a train moving across hot plains. The year is 1857, and India feels tense, the air heavy with dust and rumour. The carriage sways, its wooden boards creaking, the smell of coal smoke thick in your throat. Outside the window, villages blur past, mud walls, palm trees, women bending at wells. You hear soldiers talking in low voices, words sharp, anxious. Something is stirring, something that feels larger than ordinary unrest. The sepoys, the Indian soldiers who form the backbone of the company's army, are restless. They march in lines, muskets glinting, yet their eyes are uneasy. Whispers spread like sparks, new cartridges greased with pig and cow fat, an insult to both Hindu and Muslim faiths. Some say the rumours are false, others swear they are true. The uncertainty is enough. You stand in the drill yard, the sun blistering overhead, and watch men hesitate as they bite cartridges, their hands trembling. The air tastes of sweat and suspicion. Then comes the spark. In Meerut, sepoys refuse the cartridges. Punishment follows, humiliation, shackles, lashes, anger erupts. The barracks are stormed, British officers cut down, prisons opened, towns set aflame. You hear the roar of voices, the clash of steel, the screams of the dying. Smoke rises into the sky, black plumes blotting the sun. You grip your musket, your palms slick with sweat, and realize the rebellion has begun. You march through burning streets, the air acrid, the ground slick with ash. Families flee, clutching children, their eyes wide with terror. In Delhi, rebels seize the old Mughal capital, the red fort glowing in the sun. Bahadur Shah II, the frail last emperor, is declared the symbolic leader. His beard trembles, his voice weak, but the city swells with defiance. Drums beat through the night, chants echo in alleys, and the empire feels suddenly fragile. British forces retaliate. Sieges begin. You crouch behind crumbling walls, bullets whining overhead. The smell of powder and sweat is constant, smoke stinging your eyes until they water. In Cawnpore, tragedy deepens the war. Accounts describe British families massacred after a surrender gone awry, men, women, children, their blood staining the well where bodies were thrown. Some later argue the numbers were exaggerated. Others insist the horror was even worse than reported. To you, the memory is unbearable. The silence afterward, broken only by flies buzzing thick in the air. Reprisals are brutal. Villages suspected of aiding rebels are burned. Prisoners are tied to cannons and executed. The blasts echoing across fields. You smell scorched flesh. Hear the cries of the condemned. Watch birds wheel above the carnage. Mercy is rare, vengeance common. Letters home speak of restoring order. But in the dust and blood, it feels more like ruin. The rebellion spreads, then falters. Lucknow holds out under siege, its defenders huddled in crumbling walls, rationing food until bones show beneath skin. You are there when relief finally arrives. Bugles sounding, bayonets gleaming in the sun. The joy of survival is sharp, almost painful. Yet the city lies shattered, streets choked with rubble, air heavy with the stench of death. Victory tastes of ashes. By 1858, the uprising is crushed. Bahadur Shah is exiled, his sons executed. The Mughal dynasty, once splendid, ends in blood and silence. The company too is finished. Its rule, marked by profit and famine, by arrogance and fragile bargains, collapses under the weight of rebellion. You stand in a hall as a proclamation is read. The British Crown will now rule India directly. The East India Company fades into history, its ledgers and warehouses absorbed by government. Queen Victoria's words reach India in printed sheets, promises of protection, of respect for faith, of justice. You hold one in your hands, the paper thin, the ink smudged, the language is calm, even tender. Yet outside, you see bayonets gleaming, cannons parked at crossroads, soldiers patrolling streets still scarred by revolt. The Raj is born not in peace, but in fire. Under Crown rule, the changes come quickly. Railways spread like veins across the land, steel tracks humming under iron wheels. You ride in a carriage packed with people, the air thick with sweat, the clatter of wheels loud in your ears. Telegraph poles rise, wires strung taut, carrying words faster than horse or sail. You watch the lines stretch into the horizon, messages sparking like lightning across a continent. And yet, hunger still lingers. Famines continue, some say worsened by policies that favor exports over survival. You walk through villages where rice is shipped out even as children's bellies swell with starvation. The smell of death hangs over the fields, sickly sweet, unforgettable. Officials insist relief is attempted, that the empire cannot feed everyone. Letters contradict, accounts clash, but the sight of shallow graves speaks louder than debate. Still the Raj presses forward. Schools open, English taught alongside Sanskrit and Persian. In Calcutta, students recite Shakespeare in classrooms where chalk dust hangs in the air. Some embrace it, eager for new knowledge. Others resent it, seeing in each word the shadow of conquest. You sit at a desk, the wood scarred with carvings, and feel the contradiction, opportunity and domination bound together. At night, the city glows with gas lamps, their light flickering against carved stone facades. You walk along streets busy with carriages, the smell of horse dung mixing with jasmine, drifting from gardens. Above you, the stars are faint, drowned by smoke. You pass guards at gates, their bayonets gleaming, and realize that peace here is enforced, not born. You lie down on a thin mattress, the room hot, the air buzzing with mosquitoes. Sleep comes slowly, your mind filled with the roar of rebellion, the cries of the starving, the rattle of trains. You turn onto your side, the sheets damp, and breathe deeply. The Raj is here to stay, at least for now, but its birth leaves you unsettled. Empires can survive hunger, war, even rebellion, but whether they can survive memory is another question. You wake to the dry rasp of wind across sand. The year is the 1880s, and Africa stretches before you vast, sun-blazed and restless. The air smells of dust and sweat, of leather straps and canvas tents baking under the sun. You stand at the edge of a camp, flies buzzing around your face, while maps are spread across a table. Red pencils scrape across paper, drawing lines that slice through deserts, rivers, and mountains. To you, these are marks of ink. To millions who live on this land, they will become boundaries they never asked for. The scramble for Africa has begun. In Berlin, far from the heat, men in stiff suits divide a continent as though sharing bread at a table. You imagine them lifting pens, their breath clouding in lamplight, the smell of ink and cigar smoke thick in the air. They draw borders across lands they have never seen, their voices calm as they assign rivers and coasts like possessions. Records suggest some delegates barely understood the terrain they carved. Others argued fiercely over scraps of territory. The map that emerges is neat on paper, chaotic in life. On the ground, the empire moves quickly. You march with soldiers along the Nile, the sun scorching, the water shimmering like glass. Your boots sink into mud, mosquitoes swarming in clouds. In Sudan, Mahtist rebels rise against Egyptian and British control. You hear their chants carried on hot wind, drums beating like thunder. The siege of Khartoum begins. You crouch behind crumbling walls, the air thick with gunpowder, the cries of the wounded echoing. General Gordon refuses to leave, his figure calm against the chaos. Some letters later paint him as a martyr, others as stubborn to the point of folly. When the city falls in 1885, the smell of blood and smoke fills the streets, the Nile carrying bodies downstream. The empire reels but does not retreat. You sail south, the sea air cooler for a time, before stepping onto Cape soil. The land smells of dust and dung, oxen dragging wagons across plains that stretch toward the horizon. Here British settlers clash with Boers, Dutch-descended farmers who claim the land as their own. The ground is rich with diamonds, then gold, treasures that glitter but curse every hand that seeks them. Mines open, their shafts dark and airless, men labouring deep underground where dust clogs lungs. You descend into one, the air thick, the lamps flickering, picks strike rock, sparks flying, sweat dripping from brows. Above, the empire counts profit. Below, bodies bend and break. Tension sharpens into war. The Boer War erupts at the turn of the century. You tramp across veldt, the grass brittle beneath your boots, the air dry, the sun relentless. Commandos ride swift, their Mausers snapping shots from hidden ridges. You hear the ping of bullets against rock, the whistle of near misses. British columns move slower, burdened by supply wagons, their red coats blending poorly into dust. Skirmishes flare, villages burn, smoke rises in thin black lines against pale sky. Camps spread across the land, not only for soldiers but for civilians. Boer families are herded into barbed wire enclosures. You step inside one, the ground churned to mud, the air sour with sickness. Tents sag, children cough, women huddle with shawls pulled tight. Some accounts insist food is scarce, medicine scarcer, others downplay the suffering. Yet you see hollow cheeks, sunken eyes, graves freshly dug at the camp's edge. The war is fought, not just with rifles, but with hunger and confinement. In other corners of Africa, resistance flares. In Ashanti lands, warriors rise, drums booming, muskets flashing. In East Africa, the Maji rebellion spreads, fighters believing sacred water will turn bullets aside. Accounts differ, some say faith carried them far, others that rifles cut them down mercilessly. Still the soil drinks their blood, and their cries echo in memory. You march through these lands, feeling both pride and unease. The empire claims order, yet it sows scars deeper than borders. Back in London, Africa is discussed in parlours over tea. Globes turn beneath polished hands, fingers tapping red patches growing larger each year. Newspapers trumpet victories, gloss over defeats. The smell of ink and coal smoke fills the air as headlines declare progress. You sit with a cup of tea sweetened with sugar, and wonder if those sipping beside you know, or care how that sweetness is bought. The contradictions weigh heavily. You recall standing on the veldt, the sun harsh on your neck, hearing a Boer child cough in a camp. You recall trudging through desert heat toward Khartoum, your throat cracked, your ears ringing with cries. You recall walking markets in Lagos, the air alive with palm oil and kola nuts, while Union Jacks fluttered overhead. Each memory is different, yet all share a thread. Empire pressing down, reshaping lives, claiming land with ink, steel and hunger. As the century wanes, railways cut through savannah and jungle, their tracks gleaming. You ride one, the carriage rattling, the air thick with coal dust. Outside, giraffes watch from a distance, their long necks swaying. The land feels vast, eternal, yet the tracks carve it open. Telegraph wires hum, carrying words faster than hoof or sail. You lean back against the wooden seat, the smell of smoke sharp, the rhythm of wheels steady, and wonder what the land remembers of itself before wires, before rails, before flags. Night falls on the continent. You sit by a fire in the veldt, the stars sharp, the air cold despite the heat of the day. The flames crackle, sparks rising into darkness. Around you silence stretches wide, broken only by the cry of a jackal. You pull your blanket close, its wool scratchy, and close your eyes. Sleep comes with the smell of dust and smoke still in your nostrils, with the image of borders drawn far away, now carved deep into earth. The scramble has ended, the land partitioned, but its wounds are fresh. You feel them in your bones as you drift into uneasy dreams. You wake to the rattle of rifles stacked in rows, and the smell of damp wool uniforms. The year is 1914, and war has come to Europe, pulling the empire into its orbit. The air at the training ground in Salisbury Plain tastes of mud and coal smoke. Men march in columns, their boots thudding in rhythm, breath clouding in the morning chill, but not all the faces are English. You see turbans, khaki dyed a deeper shade for Indian sepoys. You hear voices in French-accented English from West Africa, clipped vowels from the Caribbean. The empire has answered the call, and its heart now beats across continents. On the Western Front, the mud is endless. You crouch in a trench, the stench of latrines and wet earth heavy in your nose. Rats scurry along duckboards, their bodies slick, their eyes glinting in lantern light. Around you men cough, curse, mutter prayers. A sepoy from Punjab sits beside you, fingering a letter smudged with rain. He tells you of wheat fields shimmering in sunlight, of sisters waiting at home. His words are calm, but his eyes are weary. You nod, though you cannot picture his land beyond the wire. Shell fire erupts. The ground shakes, clods of mud raining down. You press your body flat, your ears ringing, your lungs filling with the sharp tang of cordite. Gas drifts over the parapet, yellow-green, hissing like a serpent. You tug at your mask, its rubber straps pulling at your skin, the glass fogging with your own breath. Someone coughs, chokes, collapses. You hear the desperate cry of a man clawing at his throat. Records suggest thousands died in these clouds, though some later argued the gas terrified more than it killed. To you, terror itself feels like death enough. The trench life grinds you down. Boots rot from damp, toes blister, lice itch under your uniform seams. You chew hard biscuits that taste of chalk, drink tea brewed black with mud, and sleep in bursts between bombardments. At night you write letters home, the paper spattered with candle wax, your words careful but false. You describe sunsets, camaraderie, duty, but you leave out the smell of corpses half buried in walls, the cries of men begging for water as they bleed out in no man's land. You fold the page, press it flat, and wonder if lies are a kindness. In the deserts of the Middle East, the war smells different, dust and camel sweat, the faint sweetness of dates in saddlebags. You march with columns beneath a blazing sun, rifles slung, lips cracked. The Ottoman Empire crumbles, its lands carved into promises written hastily on paper. You hear of Sykes-Picot, of secret deals dividing deserts between Britain and France like lines in sand. Soldiers mutter that the Arabs who fight beside them will find betrayal waiting in the peace. Some accounts confirm it, others deny it, but the unease clings to every march, every whispered oath. At Gallipoli, you climb cliffs slippery with blood, the sea behind you littered with wreckage. The air reeks of salt and smoke, the cries of the wounded echoing across narrow beaches. Australians and New Zealanders fight beside you, their accents sharp, their songs carrying in the night. They are young, loud, reckless, yet when dawn breaks, many lie still on the sand. The campaign falters, retreat ordered. You taste failure on your tongue, bitter as ash, and know it will scar more than bodies, it will mark nations. Elsewhere, colonial troops carve their own paths. In East Africa, African porters carry supplies through jungles alive with insects, their backs bent, their feet swollen from endless marches. Some die of disease before they see combat, their bodies buried quickly under banana leaves. In Mesopotamia, British and Indian troops slog through marshes, where reeds tower above their heads, the air heavy with rot. At Kut, surrounded and starving, men eat horseflesh, then rats, then nothing at all before surrender. Some records call it a humiliation, others a tragedy. You remember only the hollow eyes of starving men, their lips cracked, their whispers faint as leaves in wind. Back in Europe, the war drags on. Canadians storm Vimy Ridge, their bayonets glinting, their boots sinking in chalky soil. West Indian Labour battalions dig trenches, their shovels striking earth, their hands blistered. Letters from home tell of pride, of sacrifice. Yet when these men return, many will find recognition lacking, their service swallowed by silence. You feel the unfairness settle heavy in your chest, harder than the rifle on your shoulder. The war ends in 1918, with bells ringing, with parades in London, where flags flutter and confetti rains. You walk through the streets, the air electric with relief. The smell of roasting chestnuts drifts from stalls, laughter spills from taverns, church bells peal in unison. Yet beneath the joy lies grief. Millions are dead, villages emptied, families torn. The empire stands larger than ever, new mandates in the Middle East, new lands under its hand, but its foundations feel cracked. In Ireland, unrest boils over. You hear gunshots in Dublin during the Easter Rising of 1916, rebels barricading streets, the air sharp with cordite. Smoke rises above the city, church bells drowned by artillery fire. Some accounts describe the rising as doomed from the start. Others call it the spark of independence. You walk past bodies laid in rows, hear the shuffle of boots as leaders are executed at dawn. The crack of rifles echoes like judgment. The rebellion is crushed, but the echo grows louder in silence. By 1922, partition comes, the island divided, a wound that will not heal easily. In Palestine, British troops march under palm trees, their boots crunching in sand. The Balfour Declaration hangs in the air like smoke, promises to Jews, to Arabs, to allies, all tangled. You hear debates in smoky cafes, voices raised, hands slicing the air in frustration. Some argue Britain offered too much, others too little. The uncertainty tastes metallic, like blood at the back of the throat. Across Africa, soldiers return from war to villages where crops have withered, taxes risen, their uniforms fray, their medals tarnish, but their voices grow bolder. You sit in a circle beneath a baobab tree, listening as men speak of freedom, of change, of futures beyond empire. The wind rustles leaves above, the air cool, and you sense something shifting. Back in London, the cenotaph is raised. You stand before it on Armistice Day. The crowd hushed, wreaths of poppies lie at its base, their red petals vivid against grey stone. The silence stretches, broken only by the faint sob of someone nearby. You bow your head, the chill air stinging your eyes. Around you the city moves on, but you know the memory of this wall will never fully fade. At night you lie in a narrow bed, the window rattling in the wind. Sleep comes slowly, broken by dreams of trenches, of desert marches, of voices lost in smoke. The empire feels victorious, yet hollowed. Its reach is wider, its pride louder, but its heart scarred, weary, restless, beats unevenly. You pull the blanket tighter, the wool scratchy, and breathe deep. Outside, the world is quiet, but inside, you sense fractures growing. The war is over, yet the peace feels fragile, as though it could crumble with the lightest touch. Word count 11:52. You wake to the drone of aircraft above, and the distant rumble of artillery. The year is 1942. and the empire once thought unshakable is trembling. In Singapore, the air is heavy with humidity, sweat trickling down your back even as you shoulder your rifle. Palm fronds rattle in the warm breeze, their sound drowned by the whine of bombers. The city smells of oil and smoke, of fear thick enough to taste. The Japanese advance is swift, unstoppable. You crouch in a trench, the soil damp, the air sharp with cordite. Around you, British, Indian and Australian troops huddle together, their eyes wide. You hear shouted orders, confused, frantic. Supplies dwindle. Ammunition counted bullet by bullet, rice rationed to a handful. In the streets behind, civilians rush for shelter, the cries of children piercing above the drone of planes. Some accounts call Singapore an impregnable fortress. Others later insist it was a bluff. Either way, when the white flag rises, you feel the ground give way beneath you. The fall of Singapore is like a wound ripped open. Soldiers march into captivity, their boots shuffling, their faces blank. The air smells of sweat, of despair, of defeat. For the first time, you sense the empire's aura of invincibility has cracked. The memory will linger long after the war ends, proof that Britain can bleed, can falter, can fall. In India, the war pounds from afar, but the tension is closer. Trains rattle across plains, carrying troops. The carriages packed, the air hot and stale. Posters urge loyalty. Voices on radios plead for support. Yet in villages, whispers swell. Quit India. You march through crowded streets of Bombay, the air filled with incense and smoke, crowds shouting for independence. Police batons swing, the crack of wood against flesh, the cries of protesters rising. Some accounts insist the movement was fractured, others insist it was unstoppable. You feel the weight of history pressing in either way. The famine of 1943 deepens the crisis. In Bengal, fields lie dry, rice absent from markets. You walk through villages where silence hangs heavy, broken only by the cries of children too weak to stand. The smell of decay lingers, sweet, unbearable. Mothers cradle lifeless infants. Fathers stumble in search of food that never comes. Some historians blame policy, grain diverted to feed armies and stockpiles while civilians starved. Others cite nature, cyclone and blight. But when you kneel in the dust beside a body, distinctions feel hollow. Hunger itself is the only truth. The war ends in 1945 with parades in London, fireworks bursting above the Thames, their colours shimmering on black water. You stand in the crowd, the air filled with cheers, the smell of beer and roasted chestnuts. Yet pride is mixed with exhaustion. The city still bears scars, walls pockmarked, streets lined with rubble. Families carry photos of those who never returned. Britain has survived, but victory feels thin, stretched. And then comes the unravelling. In India, independence cannot be delayed. You ride a train in August 1947. Its carriages packed beyond measure, the air suffocating with heat and bodies. Families clutch bundles, goats bleat, children cry. Outside, fields roll past, dry and golden. But this is no ordinary journey. It is partition. Along the tracks, smoke rises from villages burned, bodies lie in ditches, the air acrid with ash. Neighbours turn on neighbours, blades flashing in alleys, wells filling with blood. Some estimates count 1 million dead, others more. You hear screams carried on the wind, long after the train has passed. The empire leaves, but its absence tears deeper than its presence. Elsewhere, departures follow. In Africa, voices grow louder, insistent. You stand in a crane in 1957, the air thick with drums and song. Flags rise, not Union Jacks but the bright colours of Ghana's independence. Crowds dance in the streets, sweat shining on their foreheads, joy ringing louder than any bell. You clap along, the rhythm infectious, and feel pride, though it is not yours to claim. More nations follow. Nigeria, Kenya, Tanzania, each step forward, both celebration and struggle. You walk through these streets, the air filled with dust and jubilation, and realize empire is slipping like sand through fingers. In the Caribbean too, winds change. You sit in a yard in Kingston, the smell of jerk spices and wood smoke drifting from cook fires as radios crackle with news of independence. Children chase each other between houses, painted bright blue and yellow, their laughter rising. The sea glitters nearby, endless and calm. You sip rum, its warmth spreading, and realize this island, once a jewel of sugar and chains, now claims its own dawn. Back in Britain, the changes are felt at home. Immigrants arrive on ships like the Empire Windrush in 1948, their suitcases battered, their clothes neat. They step onto docks smelling of coal smoke and salt, their faces both eager and anxious. Some carry instruments, others only memories of sunshine and song. You hear their laughter, their accents rich, their voices mixing into London's hum. For some, it feels like renewal. For others, unease grows, posters promise jobs, yet whispers of resentment slither in pubs, on buses. The empire returns home, its people filling the heart of the island that once ruled them. By the 1950s and 60s, the pattern is set: independence after independence, flag after flag lowered. You sit in Nairobi, the air sharp with eucalyptus, and watch Union Jacks pulled down. In their place rise green, black, red. Crowds cheer, ululate, raise fists, yet shadows linger, new governments fragile, old wounds deep. Some celebrate the future, others fear it. You feel both. One last echo remains in Asia. You stand in Hong Kong, in the 1990s, the skyline glittering with neon, the harbour alive with ferries. The air smells of diesel, sea spray, roasted chestnuts from market stalls. Crowds gather as fireworks explode, bright against the night. The British flag lowers, the Chinese rises. The sound is not of cheers but of murmurs, anxious, hopeful, uncertain. You stand still, watching the cloth ripple, and realize the empire's last great outpost has slipped away. Back in London, you walk along the Thames once more. The river glitters, lights from glass towers reflecting on its surface. The air smells of fried food and car exhaust, the hum of traffic constant. You pause at the cenotaph, wreaths of poppies bright against stone. Tourists pass, their cameras flashing, their laughter echoing. Life continues, yet history hums beneath it all. You breathe deep, the city's air heavy but familiar. The empire is gone, its lands independent, its power fractured, but its traces remain in language, in streets, in memory. You close your eyes, and hear it all still. The crack of rifles at Singapore, the cries on partition trains, the songs of independence parades. The echoes will not fade, even as the flags change. You pull your coat tighter against the London wind. The empire has quit, departed, dissolved. But its shadows stretch long, reaching into every corner of your thoughts as you drift toward uneasy sleep. You wake to the sound of waves slapping against a hull and the distant blare of a ship's horn. The year is 1956 and the empire is no longer whole. It is splintering. The Suez Canal glitters under the desert sun. Its waters calm, but the world around it shakes. You stand on deck, the air hot with dust, the smell of diesel and salt in your nose. British and French troops have landed, convinced they can reclaim control after Egypt nationalizes the canal. Yet whispers follow, America disapproves, the United Nations protests, allies hesitate. You march along the sand, boots sinking with each step, the air searing your throat. The canal shimmers like a silver blade, ships idling uncertainly. Then comes the humiliation, orders to withdraw. You feel the ground tilt beneath you, not from battle but from politics. The empire once capable of dictating terms now bows to pressure. Newspapers at home call it a crisis. To you it feels like a revelation. The island is no longer the center of the world. From that moment, the unraveling quickens. In Africa, flags rise one after another. You stand in Accra in 1957 as Ghana celebrates independence. The air is thick with drums and dancing, the smell of roasted maize and sweat mingling. Kwame Nkrumah raises his arms, his voice booming. At long last the battle has ended. The crowd erupts, thousands surging, their cheers shaking the ground. You clap until your palms sting. your throat raw with shouting. It feels like dawn breaking. In Nigeria, in Kenya, in Tanzania, the pattern repeats. Speeches echo under open skies, hands wave flags of green, black, gold. Yet the air sometimes carries gunpowder as well as song. In Kenya, the Mal Mal rebellion leaves scars deep as trenches. You walk through the highlands, the smell of burnt huts in your nostrils, the sound of chains rattling in detention camps. Some accounts call the uprising savagery, others resistance. You cannot untangle it. You only see eyes that burn with anger, and guards whose own gaze flickers with fear. By the 1960s and 70s, the retreat accelerates. In the Caribbean, independence follows swiftly. You sit in a crowded yard in Trinidad, the air heavy with calypso music, the scent of rum and fried plantains wafting from stalls. Fireworks burst overhead, their smoke curling into the warm night. Laughter and song spill into the streets. Yet beneath the joy lies anxiety. New nations must stand alone, balancing dreams with debts, heritage with hardship. You sip rum, it's burn sharp, and wonder if freedom is always this fragile at birth. Back in Britain, the Empire's echoes arrive with people. Ships like the Empire Windrush dock in Tilbury, their decks crowded with passengers carrying battered suitcases. The smell of the sea clings to their clothes as they step onto foreign soil. Some are hopeful, some cautious, but all carry the warmth of the Caribbean sun in their voices. You watch as families settle in London, Birmingham, Bristol, their children laughing in accents that blend new with old. They bring music, food, faith, a richness that colours the grey streets. Yet not everyone welcomes them. In pubs you hear mutters, on buses you see stares. The empire is folding into its own capital, and not everyone is ready. Meanwhile, Asia shifts too. You stand in Kuala Lumpur as the Malaysian flag rises, the humid air alive with cheers. You walk in the streets of Hong Kong, where neon lights glow and junks slip across the harbour. The colony thrives on trade, its markets bursting with fish, silk, radios, toys. The smell of noodles and incense drifts through alleys crowded with life. Yet the shadow of 1997 already looms, the promise that Britain will return it to China. People speak of it in hushed voices, uncertain of what it means. You stand on the waterfront, the skyline shimmering, and feel time itself moving faster than the tide. The empire shrinks, but it does not vanish. In its place, the Commonwealth rises. You sit in a hall as representatives gather, faces from Africa, Asia, the Caribbean. The air smells of polished wood and fresh ink. Voices echo not with obedience but with negotiation. These are not colonies but partners, at least in name. You sense pride in the room, yet also unease. What binds them together now? History, language, shared wounds. You cannot answer, but you feel the fragile threads of connection hum in the air. In Britain, the loss brings both relief and melancholy. Streets rebuild after war, industry hums, but decline whispers in closed factories, in coal smoke that no longer rises. You walk through shipyards once alive with hammer and saw, now silent, the smell of rust sharp in your nose. The Empire's ships are fewer, its reach shorter. Yet in music halls, in football matches, in pubs thick with smoke, pride lingers, nostalgia for red maps and forgotten power. The 1980s bring another crisis. You stand in the Falkland Islands, wind biting, the sea roaring. The air smells of salt and sheep dung, the ground hard beneath your boots. War returns, brief but fierce. Ships burn, aircraft scream low, men die on bleak hills. Britain wins, but the victory feels small, an echo of older triumphs. Still, it rekindles pride, a reminder that the empire's shadow remains long even as the body shrinks. Then comes 1997. You stand in Hong Kong's harbour, the air electric with humidity and anticipation. Fireworks crack above skyscrapers, their smoke drifting into the night. Crowds gather, some silent, some cheering, some weeping. The Union Jack lows, the red flag rises. The sound is not of cannon or bells but of murmurs, mixed, uncertain, unresolved. You breathe in the diesel tang of ferries, the scent of street food, and realize you are watching the final great handover. The empire is gone, yet its fingerprints remain on every map, every tongue, every trade route. Back in London, you walk the Thames embankment. The river slides dark and steady, bridges lit with golden lamps. You pass the cenotaph, wreaths of poppies bright against grey stone. Buses rumble by, their engines humming, their sides plastered with advertisements in a dozen languages. The empire no longer rules, but it lingers in food, in speech, in the faces of those who call Britain home. You feel it in the curry shops of Birmingham, the reggae clubs of Brixton, the cricket fields of Manchester. Not empire but memory, woven deep, impossible to unpick. You lie down in a quiet room, the night outside hushed, the sheets are soft, the air cool. As sleep pulls at you, you think of centuries of marching boots, of sails and steam, of borders drawn and redrawn. You hear the echoes, shouts in Delhi streets, songs in Ghana, the whisper of the Suez wind. The empire is gone, but its story lingers, heavy as history itself. You're safe now. The long march of centuries fades behind you like mist dissolving in morning light. The clang of iron, the crack of muskets, the roar of cannon, all drift away, quieter, softer, until they vanish entirely. What remains is only calm. You breathe in slowly, and the air carries no smoke, no dust, no salt spray, only stillness. The world is hushed, and your body loosens as though the weight of history itself has slipped from your shoulders. You feel warmth settle over you, like a heavy blanket, pulled snug on a winter's night. Images drift past gently, sails glowing against the horizon, fields swaying in warm breezes, lanterns bobbing on quiet rivers. None demand your attention. They move like clouds across a wide sky, slow and effortless. Your eyelids grow heavier, and with each blink, the past recedes further, voices fade into whispers. The crowds in Accra, the chants in Delhi, the murmurs in London's coffee houses, all blur into a single soothing hum. Even the drums of war, once relentless, have softened into the low, steady rhythm of a heartbeat, your heartbeat, calm and steady. You feel the ground beneath you firm and familiar, no longer mud or sand or shifting deck. Just a safe place to rest. You sink deeper, your muscles unclenching, your breath lengthening. The centuries are behind you now. Ahead lies only quiet. Let the echoes fade. Let the maps and flags fold themselves away. You are here in this still moment, in this gentle darkness. You are whole, you are warm, and you are allowed to rest. The world continues to turn, but for now, you are carried only by calm. Drift, soften, let go. Sleep comes easily, and you are ready to meet it.